but in general, I think for the first game they felt really confident, and they just got like all their hopes and dreams shattered by RTZCA, and then that kind of put them on tilt for game number 2, and they're like, okay, we can do this, and then they got outdrafted by the Brews. So I think like they've just been really set back by Secret in games 1 and 2, and Fnatic, I think it's a team that they're much more comfortable playing against because they do play similar styles, and they won't be caught off guard by something.
I would say they know each other very well too.
Right. So let's talk a little about Fnatic. We haven't seen them on the stream yet. Now Fnatic, overall a team that, of course, went through a team name change with Fnatic now sponsoring them recently, but just kind of, I feel like high hopes for Team Fnatic. A lot of people are thinking, all right, Fnatic probably going to do pretty well in the next tournaments that they're coming up, which includes TI5 this weekend, or this week, rather. What do you guys think? I mean, do you agree with that? Because we've been talking, all right, these teams probably top 8, maybe top 4.
This guy's the expert.
I know. That's why we're coming to. We'll get to winner. But, some we're saying Secret probably top 4 for sure, maybe even top 2. But then other teams, they have a shot at top 8. Where do you see Fnatic in how they've been doing recently?
I think recently the main thing they had was transitioning their roles, because they initially started with Kerchi as their mid player, and the supports were Mushi and Johnny, and they sort of, I think 2 months ago or 1.5 months ago, they swapped the roles back to Mushi mid, because I think the main reason was like Kerchi, like their youngest player, he was like somewhat inexperienced in certain situations and having to fill big shoes with Mushi as your teammate. So I guess that sort of affected him a little, and they felt that it would be better for the team to play Mushi mid and compared to Mushi as a support. So I think that alone has a huge implication in this event, because they only played with this role for 2 months. So a lot of their support play isn't like sharp or as good as the other teams, I would say. And that's their primary weakness as a team, I feel.
I feel
the partnership is like not there, like because they haven't been playing together. It's very important to be able to have the understanding between the supports. It's like sometimes there are certain situations where you have to do stuff and decide in 1 second, and you can't just like, oh, we gotta do this. You just do it and it works together. The teamwork has to be there between the supports.
Yeah.
So it's not there for Fnatic right now.
That is a good point, and we are seeing them just kind of getting ready to set their stuff up and get ready for their match. I was just supposed to say, I feel that every time I ask about a team, Winter's focus is on the supports, whether it's the supports that are important or the supports are not there yet. They need to get the communication better.
Don't underrate supports.
I mean, by all means, I think that's a valid point. Obviously, all roles are pretty important, and oftentimes supports are the ones that are most overlooked, if any role is overlooked by people when they talk about teams. So I think it's a good point you bring up, but I just found it interesting that you do like to heavily focus on where the supports lie.
Yeah, it's because mainly like a lot of the strategies revolve around, like in the draft, you plan a lot in early game. Okay, guys, we're going to do this. We're going to roam. We're going to focus on shutting down the storm. Or we're going to do, like, it's always about the supports, how they move around early game rather than, the cores moving around. Mostly the cores are like sitting and, okay, I'm just going to do my thing, and the supports will be moving around, making decisions. That's the biggest thing, in the early game. Supports are the ones making decisions. Where to gang, who to get a TP on early to hold, so you can back up the other lanes and stuff like that. So I feel supports are really important in the first 15 minutes. I mean, not to say they are not important later, but
no, right, but
they play
their importance really shines.
They play a really huge role in the first 15 minutes.
Well, how do you think their two supports compare to Faith and Chuan, who I would definitely say are more experienced?
Yeah, definitely Chuan and Faith are more experienced. But I want to say that Johnny and Kerchi, even though they don't have much time playing support together, but at certain moments in the game, sometimes they show brilliance, like in between, separating farm between the two players. Like they have very good farm between the both of them. And when we talk about IG before, sometimes I think we discussed this about Faith. Sometimes he has too little farm,
Right.
like he doesn't get enough for his hero to do his job. But whereas what I find in Johnny and Kerchi, they like to split farm like evenly sometimes, but depending on what Kerchi gets, like sometimes if he gets a Visage or a Lashrock as a support or Lina, he gets more priority. But mostly they balance it out better, I'd say, compared to IG, which Chuan usually gets most of the farm.
Yeah, so I mean, Fnatic basically not really choosing anyone as a sacrifice in that farm. They always like to have it balanced if they can help it.
Yeah.
Unless it's obviously something like
no
Lash.
biasness.
No bias. Oh, well, that's nice. Yeah, what a nice team. I would want to play on that team. No bias. Everyone gets equal farm. It's a place I would want to play.
Equal opportunity farmers.
Equal opportunity farmers. I don't know if that's really the same meaning that we were having about Fnatic, but we can run with that. Fnatic, the equal opportunity farmers.
Also not win games.
You know what?
That's true.
Coming back to his name, I was telling you guys about.
Oh yeah, I wanted to ask you. I thought about it when you first brought it up.
Yeah.
But yeah, do tell us, because you had a little bit of explanation
Yeah,
about
it's a little
Kachik.
story about Kachik. His name actually means in our Malaysian native language, the first word is Kachik. It means small, and obviously the next one everyone knows Imba. It means imbalance. So
Right.
his name means small but imbalance. I kind of have this idea that why he chose his name because he probably got bullied a lot because he's quite small.
But he's in balance.
Yeah, but
He's about
he's imbalanced in Dota.
right, right. So this is
So
where
it's not
he
only
gets to
small,
shine.
but also tilted.
Yeah, and I remember when he started playing tournaments, like when he's 19 now. He started playing, like, I think 9 years ago, around that time frame.
Yeah.
9 to 10 years ago. His mom would always follow him to events, so it would look kind of like a mom bringing a small kid to a tournament, but the player is the mid player in the team. So
Right.
it's like, okay,
pretty
this is
crazy.
actually the mid player accompanied by his mom.
That
Yeah.
reminds me of the first tournament pick Andy at LANs. He also looked like I can't remember how old he was at his first LAN, but
I think it was with Walker Gaming.
it was with Volker Gaming.
Yeah.
That's like 10 years ago, I think. that was also
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of
some funny
interesting that
pictures from back then.
at that time where a parent would follow her child to a tournament, it's nowadays because it's so big, so it's common for parents to
Right.
be with
But
the,
back then it was not.
yeah,
the
back
same.
then it's not something that you see often.
Yeah, I mean, we even saw earlier with No Tail's video, right? I mean, ran into some, issues or conflicts with his parents until they were convinced that, okay, this is something you really believe in and whatnot. I mean, yeah, you say it's more common now, but even now, it's definitely something that people note. It's like, oh, your parents are here to watch you. That's pretty cool. Like, that's pretty
Yeah,
sweet.
it's more acceptable, I guess.
Right, but
Yeah.
back then it was like, whoa, your parents are here at a tournament? Like, what's going on? Like, why are they here? But yeah, that's actually really just sweet of them, obviously, to have that connection with his mother. And then now, look at where he is. He's here playing TI5, just having another shot for the TI Championship title, and in Fnatic. So and Fnatic, again, pretty high hopes for a lot of people. We'll see how they do against IG. Obviously, that will give us a better read. Talk a little bit about IG. Of course, we saw them against Secret, but we did have to jump into the game a little bit earlier. And you guys mentioned, again, IG, bunch of old school names. Most people, even if you've only watched like TIs in the past, you've heard these names before, even if you're not a complete like Dota 2 veteran fan. But do you think, is that going to affect them anyway in terms of either being overconfident or maybe being a little bit worried about playing against a team like Fnatic, where they're known for their aggression and they have these younger players that maybe could be a little bit more volatile in game?
I think they'll try to draw as much as possible on their experience and just try to play their own game.
Mm-hmm.
So they've probably. I would be surprised if they haven't seen the. I'm guessing they would have read as much as possible into the win Fnatic had over Secret, because obviously
Right.
they just came off a 0-2 loss themselves. And they will isolate one or two key heroes that they felt like was really important, and they will ban them out. I think it's very likely we don't get to see the Bloodseeker, for example, or that they will pick it themselves in the first phase like they did against Secret Game 1. And then apart from that, just generally just play their own standard style and believe that they just flat out are a stronger team based on experience, which right now I don't think I would agree with IG being stronger than Fnatic just now. But
Okay, yeah.
that's the mentality they need to have themselves. And if they get off to a good start in the series, I definitely think they will.
That's
they'll be able to carry on.
that's an interesting point you bring up. I always find it very interesting, just if or how teams adapt from game to game, especially in such a long tournament where it's going to be 2 weeks. You have to play so many matches in round robin during your groups, and then even then you're not knocked out, right? You're seeded into the bracket stage. So we saw IG picking Bloodseeker. We were like, hey, did they do that because they saw Fnatic having good success with that against Secret? So now on the flip side, is Fnatic concerned at all about possibly IG taking that if they leave it open? Do you think that's going to be a contention point for both teams, or maybe a little bit more skewed for IG? Anybody?
I think most important is they don't just pick hero like based on this team is actually picking this and it's strong. you pick based on what you feel is most comfortable and you feel that your team can play at the best. Like just look at how, for example, Secret is picking like the moment you look at the heroes, you don't have to see what team is playing this set of heroes. You know this team it's an identity. You can't just like copy paste someone's picks and bans and you just we can do the same thing, because most of the time it doesn't work because you have different mentality. Every team has their own mentality. Even though you might be playing the same lineup, but the approach will be different, so the result would obviously be different as well.
Yeah, I think the mentality for IG, I mean, they're struggling right now a little bit, I would say, as compared to what you would expect from a team with these 5 names. Prior TI champion as well, and a lot of these are like fairly older players. And I think like when you're in that sort of position, you just have a lot more pressure to perform. You don't have, 8 or 9 years ahead of you, like RTZ or Sumail, let's say, who are like, okay, if they don't win the CI, they have a lot more shots. But
Yeah.
Burning, I mean, he was rumored to have retired after last year
Yeah.
and didn't play for quite a period of time. And, you know, people speak that this might be his last TI. And, you know, when you're in that sort of position, it's like, oh, man, you know, I might not get another chance. And, you know, there's a lot of outside pressure and influence that comes into the mentality of these players.
All right. Yeah. So, again, I mean, I like that you always bring that up, Winter, that it really depends on how you feel about your
Yeah, I
picks
think
and
it's
whatnot.
very important to be confident on your own play style, your own believe in your own ability instead of just trying to go into a tournament. Okay, we'll just see what's good, and we'll just like blend into it instead of like sticking to your roots. Like we believe that this is our strongest play style or our strongest lineup. You have to have a lot of faith in yourself to be able to do well in this sort of event.
That's a good point. Before we jump in, I mean, I was just getting a little curious off of that one. We've talked a little bit about heroes that we weren't perhaps expecting as much, like Ember, coming into TI5. Do you think there are any teams that definitely stand like really far away from the current meta in their color? Like their color is so distant from the meta, but that they should still believe in that. Is there any team that really stands out that way at TI5, or do you think still? I mean, obviously they're all top teams, so they've been keeping track of the meta. I mean, how does that balance work out?
I think Cloud9, I think, stands out for me as a team that maybe doesn't play like unusual playstyles, but certainly unusual picks now and then. And I don't know, I find them one of the more unpredictable teams, just like all around, except that their games will go past an hour. Other than that, like it's just like the Batrider, for example. The Batrider, I would have not expected to see it at all in the group stage.
So the destination is always the same for Cloud9.
I mean,
It's just a journey.
the idea was there. You could see they were
Yeah.
gearing up into a pushing type of lineup, heavy team fight, and they
True.
needed someone to draw the attention towards the tombstone. So Batrider obviously fit the job.
It's a
of that.
they have very novel concepts, and I think Keystone part of their strategies.
That's interesting.
Other than that, any other teams? I mean, we haven't seen half the teams play.
Yeah, I mean, so we'll of course have to wait. Maybe someone has more pocket picks.
I think maybe MVP Hot 6 play some different stuff. I have to
Right.
admit I haven't seen that much, but like the first thought that just came to mind for me was MVP Phoenix, because they have a history of playing different
Yeah.
stuff, like picking outside the meta. Like Warlock, they've played a lot with Slark on QA in the past and stuff like that. And obviously their practice partner in MVP Hot 6 might also have like they obviously develop like their own little isolated meta, as
Yeah.
we talked about, because they don't have that many scrimming partners in Korea.
But overall,
I'm not sure.
all right.
I mean, when are you really outside the meta? Is the question.
True.
It's
Yeah,
difficult
you do have to draw
define,
the line
so.
somewhere. So maybe we'll talk about that more if it comes up as we look at future matches. But we are now into the draft of Game 1 between IG and Fnatic. And the first fans, not too surprising.
Yeah.
Just
We
yet.
see a common ban already every time the team that's on Dire. They're taking out Shadowfiend every time. No
we
one wants to give away Shadowfiend. If you can play it on Radiant, any team, most of the team have a Shadowfiend player, so
Right.
they try not to give it away to the team on Radiant.
Yeah, I don't even think it's worth trading for a Quab, let's say. Like, just the Radiant SF. He can't actually win the matchup versus the Queen of Pain. I think if you get a left track in return, it's fine, but that's that's being ambitious.
All right, and the Gyro also being knocked out by IG.
Well, that opens up Tusk.
Tusk is open, yeah, for the first pick. Quap has been banned out, so that's kind of the swap out there. Tusk currently being banned out over Quap.
There's Tusk, there's Undying, yeah.
Bounty Hunter.
Yeah, basically most of the fighting heroes are available.
Tusk will be the choice of weapon for IG.
Don't you think Viper is going to be like... I feel like both of these teams pick Viper.
Yeah,
a decent
because
amount.
they focus on lane dominance, so Viper is a hero that he's built to do that.
Viper
Dominate the lane.
was Viper one of the 3 heroes that Fnatic used that was dominating in that game against Secret?
I remember
Along
it
with
was picked.
Gyro
I don't remember
Seeker?
which side.
Okay.